Millions and millions of years ago, there was a Saiyan named Wukong. He was one of the first Saiyans to exist. This Saiyan was seen as the father of Saiyans. Wukong was wise and passed his teachings on to the rest of his race, being very intelligent and thinking more with his head than with his heart. Wukong easily realized that the rest of his race ended up losing important resources because of the unstoppable and constant rage that was there in the rest of the race. As Wukong realized this, and because he was clearly more successful than any other Saiyan there, having water and food in abundance and variety, he taught the Saiyans to be rational and calm so that they could live in peace. As time went by, Wukong became decorated as a god and loved by its civilization because its intelligence and its teachings helped everyone. Saiyans had rituals that were considered sacred and called upon a bit of Wukong's wisdom when needed. Wukong particularly did not like to be treated like a god, as he was a citizen like any other. But Wukong saw that this was helping the people to prosper and live in peace and harmony. As his people passed on their knowledge, the words of Wukong had already spread to all the Saiyans on the planet. Over time, Wukong was getting older and older, and he was already the oldest Saiyan of all. But he managed to remain firm because he used his medicinal knowledge and immense wisdom to find ways to continue living. Not even the most enraged of Saiyans could get irrational with so much anger around Wukong. God Wukong's word changed the temperament of all beings without exception. Even those who were considered infidels respected Wukong, as being a deity or not. His wisdom and compassion were truly respected and worshipped. Wukong once noticed a conflict between those who worshipped him as a divine creature and those who considered him just as a wise old man. Wukong then called a Saiyan from each group to represent all those who held the same or similar opinion. The Saiyans were having a very peaceful and productive debate, while Wukong was just watching and alerting the representatives when one of them was disrespectful, or calling the audience's attention when someone in it made a noise loud enough to interrupt the debate. The Saiyans were arguing with each other for long minutes, and the debate never had a real conclusion. One said that Wukong was genetically the same as the others. He was the same species, and therefore he was like any other, his enormous wisdom being the only difference and nothing else. The other said that there was no rational Saiyan like Wukong, and none so wise like him. So most of the Saiyans faithfully believed in the idea of him being something divine and kind. Wukong, observing where the debate was going, said, "There is no way to prove who was wrong or who was right, because despite being wise, there are still hundreds of thousands of things to be discovered and millions of mysteries to be unraveled. Therefore, as none of the theories were proven wrong or right, the best thing to do would be to respect the belief of your fellow man and not force each other to believe what you want them to believe. After all, that would be unfair and very wrong," Wukong said, and so peace and balance remained intact. Until one day, a ship landed near the house where Wukong lived, and furious warriors belonging to Frieza's race went to Wukong with eyes full of greed, an evil smile on their faces. A part of the people was concerned about the safety of their god, who was already very old, while the other part was more concerned with believing that the word of God would touch the hearts of those evil warriors. The strongest of that race went to Wukong, demanding his knowledge, and Wukong knew they didn't mean well. Wukong tried to warn them, but they just needed to stay calm and be kind, and wisdom would come naturally. But the warriors thought that Wukong knew how to get enough power to achieve immortality, since he knew very well what he had to do to live together. When Wukong realized this, he said that just being kind and practicing meditation would increase their lifespan. The soldiers faced each other. They were confused by what Wukong said, who decided to get out of there as it would be the best option for now. Clearly it wasn't going to work so fast that they got what they wanted overnight. In contrast, Wukong continued to live his life based on meditation and calm. At least it was like that until he met an older girl who found him on a day that Wukong had decided to walk around the planet. This girl had short black hair. She was a little shorter than Wukong. Her name was Jin. Wukong didn't remember seeing her during her lifetime, so it could just be someone who decided to live their life indoors. Wukong started walking along with the girl beside him. Wukong began to dialogue with her. "So why is this the first time I see you here?" asked the Saiyan to the Saiyan girl. The girl immediately replied, "I don't usually leave the house. Normally I stay there taking care of things. I also take care of my little brother," answered the Saiyan girl. Wukong was a little surprised, although that was to be expected. Again he replied, "You must carry a great responsibility." "How fantastic. What's your name?" questioned Wukong. The girl was happy to hear that and soon replied, "It's Jin, sir," asked the Saiyan girl with a smile in her eyes. Wukong was enchanted by the girl's name, and then he said, "What a beautiful name, Jin. You must already know me, right?" questioned the Saiyan Wukong. A blush rose on Jin's face. She was shy by Wukong's response. "Yes, Wukong, you are well known around here. Impossible not to know who you are," said Jin with a friendly smile on her face. Wukong was extremely happy hearing that and then spoke. "Thank you. Well, anyway, it's almost night. Hunger is quite harmful. Let's eat something," asked Wukong to the girl who was thinking about Wukong's proposal. Jin couldn't refuse the invitation, so she just accepted, saying, I don't want to bother you, but I accept," Jin replied. Wukong and Jin began to explore the place in search of the meal they were going to eat. They found various exotic foods and ate them deliberately. A feeling arose in Wukong's chest. It was love, a feeling that turned even the wisest of beings into an irrational being. As time passed, the feeling grew. Wukong was even happier to see her, and this was repeated for the next few months. Until on a peaceful day, ships appeared again on the Saiyan's planet. They were Frieza's race soldiers. The inhabitants fell into crisis and disorder. The soldiers began to invade the village and kill the Saiyans present there. Wukong was meditating, but he was soon interrupted by hearing the screams of the innocent people. Wukong ran, and from afar he heard the cry of his beloved. During that short period, everything was silent. Only the scream of his beloved was echoing in his mind. He ran after those responsible and found them. They were from the enemy army. However, in an attempt to save the girl, one of the Saiyans threw a spear at the soldier who was holding Jin. The spear pierced the soldier, and unfortunately, Jin too. At that moment, Wukong shed a tear. He couldn't believe what was before his eyes. It was just a nightmare, no? But this was real. Wukong exploded with rage and destroyed the enemy army in a matter of seconds. The army leader eventually managed to flee Wukong. The most rational Saiyan was taken by the purest of hatred. He took lives in a matter of seconds. Wukong took the dead body of his beloved, turned his back on his village, and disappeared from there forever. Wukong ended up arriving in Namek. He landed very abruptly and inappropriately, but it was enough to not get hurt and not break the ship that was no longer in good condition, since the time that the ship was unused took a good part of her efficiency. Wukong started flying and looking for the spheres in Namek. This task seemed to be less difficult when Wukong remembered that the spheres glowed and weren't so small. Wukong found the first spear in a cave, which he himself had to dig holes just to get it. The next was under a kind of stream that Wukong had found. The third was in the branches of a tree that was near the top of a mountain, and the last of all spheres, it was found in a village, in one of the houses inside a chest, so Wukong had to steal it stealthily. After breaking into the house and getting the spheres, Wukong sneaked out and went to a mountain. He looked in the rocks, in one of the caves on that mountain, but found nothing, until Wukong decided to fly and go to the top of the mountain. The air was thin, but Wukong was used to that. He climbed high enough that he could see a small golden glow. The fifth Dragon Ball was embedded in the mountain. Wukong punched the mountain, and after opening a huge hole, Wukong took the Dragon Ball and put it in a bag that he had. Wukong went down the mountain and started looking for the sixth Dragon Ball. He went to the sea of the place and dived. The water was thick, making it difficult to see any glow that he could have in the place. Wukong was descending more and more. The pressure exerted was making Wukong almost faint, but he saw a glow at the bottom of the sea. Wukong went down, and as soon as he caught the spear with his hand, he returned as quickly as possible to the surface. He came out of the water and lay down on the ground. Wukong said, "Finally, there's only one left now. How tiring," said Wukong, who was panting because he had lost a lot of air and needed to breathe to calm down. Wukong got up and went to get the last Dragon Ball, which was inside a huge crater. Wukong entered the place sliding along the side, and then he took the spear with his hand and put it in his bag. Wukong flew to a remote area and correctly positioned all the spears on the ground. Wukong spoke. "Takaraputo porogunga pupirito paro," said Wukong in the Namekian language. Wukong was wise to the point of knowing several languages of different people besides the Saiyans. He was a master in the language of the Namekians. The spheres glowed, and then a gigantic dragon appeared in front of Wukong. The dragon's name was Porunga. The dragon was brutal. It had big muscles on its upper body, and it didn't look much like the Shenron serpent. The dragon spoke. "You summoned me. You have 3 wishes. Keep it short," said the dragon, looking at Wukong up and down. Even with the magnitude of the presence of that frightening creature, Wukong did not show a hint of fear. He was completely emotionally balanced, that the existence of that huge being would not be able to bother him. Wukong showed determination in his eyes when he said, I want to revive a friend. His name is Yamoshi. He was a strong and fearless Saiyan. You can revive dead Saiyans, right? This is my desire, Wukong said, exhaling determination and courage on his face. Porunga smiled upon hearing Wukong's words. After the request was made, Porunga was thoughtful about what Wukong had asked for. Porunga said, "Impressive. It surprises me a lot how you don't even tremble in my presence. Normally anyone who invokes me is frightened by my size and the level of my power. Well then, let's get down to business. Do you intend to revive someone who is already gone? This is a really big wish, as it would cost you the other 2 wishes." As Yamoshi was a very powerful being. "Are you sure that's what you want, mortal?" said Porunga, questioning Wukong. Wukong continued not to be shaken, not even in the face of the praise received from such an incredible being. Wukong just pointed to the dragon. Wukong spoke. "Yes, I wouldn't ask for anything more than that. That's the only thing I want from you. So that's it. I want you to revive my friend Yamoshi," said Wukong, making his request to Porunga. Porunga stood up and looked into Wukong's eyes, looked him up and down. The dragon seemed to be even bigger, and its voice was really menacing. Porunga made some specific moves trying to fulfill Wukong's wish. Porunga said, "If that's all you want, it will be very easy for me to fulfill your request. Wukong, you have my respect, and now I will tell you what to do. Yamoshi will appear in a cave near where your ship was. Go there now. I'll finish what I'm doing before you reach the cave," Porunga said, ordering Wukong to leave. Wukong started to leave without thanking or saying goodbye. He just wanted to get as fast as possible to the cave where Yamoshi was supposed to appear. He entered the ship and looked one last time at the dragon with high hopes that his wish would come true. Although there was still a part of Wukong that thought this could go wrong. He took off with the ship and followed the path back to where Yamoshi should be. Upon reaching the planet's orbit, Wukong began its landing. But as the ship was not in a good condition, the ship began to fail as soon as it entered the planet's atmosphere, until the ship completely stopped responding to Wukong's commands, and it went towards the ground straight and faster. Wukong knew that if the ship fell at high speed, it would break, and there would be no repair for such an accident. So Wukong got out of the ship and flew toward it quickly. After doing that, Wukong held the ship and tried to lift it in midair. The ship was old and weighed more than modern ships, but Wukong was strong enough to slow it down and make it not hit the ground too fast and break. As soon as Wukong left the ship, Yamoshi appeared at full speed and went over the ship. But unintentionally, Yamoshi hit the ship with his knee, breaking the roof of the ship. Wukong's jaw dropped with that situation, because he didn't know if he wanted to punch him for having broken the ship that was just saved, or if he wanted to hug him because he hadn't seen Yamoshi for a long time. Wukong was happy to see that the dragon kept his word. Wukong decided to choose the second option, as he was happy with his friend's return. Along with Yamoshi was the Elder and Kennen, who joined the hug and were laughing after Wukong told what had just happened. Wukong said, "How in the world are the dead?" Wukong said, mocking Yamoshi. Yamoshi said, "Why don't you change, you idiot?" said Yamoshi, punching Wukong in the stomach, which made him hit the walls of the ship. Wukong said, "Haha," Wukong said, scratching his nose. Wukong took a short break to breathe and composed himself, and said, "You've been training where you were, haven't you?" Wukong said while punching Yamoshi's chin, making him fly out of the ship. The old man said, "These Saiyans always fighting," said the old man while putting his hand on his face, as if he were disappointed with what happened. Yamoshi said, "I like that, Wukong." Yamoshi shouted excitedly about the fight. Wukong left with all his speed in the direction of Yamoshi. Wukong released a ki blast in the direction of Yamoshi, who dodged and throws another ki blast in the direction of Wukong. Wukong said, "You're much faster, huh?" Wukong said, excited about the fight, but the fight was interrupted by the Elder, who ordered the two to enter the ship. The old man said, "Let's go, you crazy people, before they destroy the planet." The Elder appeared to be irritated by the Saiyans. Yamoshi said, "What a boring old man. Didn't he have another companion?" said Yamoshi, crossing his arms and returning to the ship. Wukong said, "He taught me a very strong technique. As soon as we get to the cave, I'll show you." Returning to the cave where they were, the Elder proposed to train both of them, but Anjo's apprentice Kennen appeared and interfered once more. The angel apprentice Kennen spoke. "Now can we get back to training, Wukong?" said the angel, who was serious. In another dimension, Kennen and Wukong were training. Wukong unleashed a ki blast on Kennen. The angel Kennen's apprentice spoke. "You know this isn't going to have the slightest effect on me, right?" Wukong replied. "But I know it will," Wukong said, shooting a Gallic hoe in Kennen's direction. Angel Kennen apprentice said, "Wukong, I have some questions for you. First, where did you learn this technique? And second, how long did you take to learn this? Kennen asked, surprised to see Wukong's technique. Wukong spoke. I learned this technique from the old elder in a few hours. I want to show you how strong I am now, Kennen. Let's show Ultra Instinct, said Wukong, preparing another garlic hoe. In the cave, Yamoshi was with the elder, who proposed rigorous training to Yamoshi. The old man said, let's learn a technique. It's called garlic hoe. First, you have to throw your arms at chest height and then put them back, said the elder, getting in the pose to fire the garlic hoe. The elder spoke. Now throw your hands forward like this. While the old man did the pose, Yamoshi memorized the movements. Yamoshi said, okay, old man, I'll try to reproduce your techniques. Yamoshi tried to reproduce the technique, so he shot through a forest, destroying everything there. The elder spoke. Careful where you aim, you idiot. The elder punched Yamoshi in the head, making him fall to the ground. Yamoshi said, sorry, Saiyan said while scratching his head. In another dimension, Wukong was shooting several blasts of ki towards Kennen. The angel dodged all the spears of ki. Angel Kennen spoke. Do you think you'll be able to dominate the superior instinct like this? Kennen said as he disappeared and appeared on Wukong's back. The angel apprentice Kennen glared at Wukong before making his next move. Angel Kennen apprentice spoke. You have to keep your mind calm and let your body move freely, said the angel, attacking Wukong's neck. Wukong was caught by Kennen's blow, but he kept his focus and refused to be knocked down by the angel. Wukong jumped in the opposite direction where Kennen was and fired another ki blast. However, the angel dodged his furious attacks. Wukong attacked him with a powerful blow, but Kennen was already expecting this blow, so he dodged to the side and dealt a quick blow to Wukong's forearm. Wukong was out of energy, however his objective was greater. Getting there would have been useless if he gave up. Kennen took advantage of the distraction and landed another blow to Wukong's neck. The Saiyan warrior began to spit blood but remained calm in the face of that situation. Wukong's determination was greater than anyone in this land. Wukong concentrated and started to close his eyes. Wukong spoke. Inhale and exhale, he said to himself. The angel apprentice Kennen tried to attack Wukong, but Wukong dodged even with his eyes closed. Then an aura began to fade from Kong's body, which left Kennen surprised. The angel Kennen spoke. How wonderful! This is the superior instinct. Wukong and Yamoshi's training continued while this was happening. Several planets were destroyed and dominated by Frieza's ancestor. But in the meantime, the Saiyan's planet began to be attacked by Frigg and his Ice Race army. And the apprentice, Angel was able to see this invasion thanks to his team, and immediately managed to grab Wukong and Yamoshi and take them to the Saiyan's planet. Still in the Saiyan's village. A ray of light appeared in the midst of that invasion that was transient on the Saiyan's planet was Wukong, Angel Kennen, and Yamoshi. Quickly, Angel Kennen left there, leaving only the Saiyans in battle. Frigg, seeing that flash of light, already knew it was his enemy and advanced toward them without thinking. But Wukong didn't stay still at high speed and tried to hit him with a punch, but was unsuccessful because Wukong was using Ultra Instinct, and that the form made Wukong dodge the blows quickly. But Wukong still hadn't mastered this technique perfectly and therefore lacked attack speed. Frigg threw another punch right after, making Wukong dodge once more, but Wukong tried to counterattack. But before that, Wukong was interrupted and forced to dodge a low kick from the great king of the icy race. Frigg, who was able to easily see a weakness in Wukong while smiling at Wukong's face. That was Frigg's plan every time Wukong prepared to attack. Frigg attacked and forced him to dodge, and as the resistance of the icy race is greater than that of the Saiyans, Frigg would sometime hit his punch of extreme destructive power right in the middle of the opponent's face. Wukong got serious. He really didn't have much to do in that situation. Wukong was waiting for his opponent to falter until at a certain moment Frigg started laughing non-stop. Frigg said, "Dodge to death, you idiot. Let's see how long you can play this stupid little game with my punches," said King Frigg, who kept giving unsuccessful punches and kicks to Wukong. Wukong was getting frustrated and seriously thinking about taking one of Frigg's attacks to see if this fight would end, but Wukong still didn't want to risk that much. After thinking of a way to win, a light of hope appeared and took Wukong out of the darkness. Frigg received a very hard punch that sent him flying away, and the punch was landed by Wukong's loyal partner Yamoshi. After landing a beautiful punch to his opponent's face, Yamoshi smiled. Yamoshi said, "I'm tired and bored of seeing you attack my friend Wukong, so it's my turn to join the fight, Mr. Frigg," said Yamoshi, assuming his fighting stance and thus becoming a serious threat to Frigg. Frigg said, "It looks like you're back, isn't it?" but I'm going to make you return to the world of the dead, you cursed ones." Yamoshi and Wukong greeted each other by standing side by side, and then they went at their opponent with all their strength that they had, because Frigg in terms of strength was equal to 2 Saiyans, and despite taking punches, none of the fighters had their guard really broken. Yamoshi and Wukong were holding up well to the punches and kicks that were taking until Yamoshi backed up to prepare a technique while Wukong faced Frigg alone. The blow consisted of Wukong distracting the opponent and Yamoshi aiming his technique at Frigg, so that when Yamoshi released his technique, Wukong dodged it, and the opponent took all the damage himself. Wukong and Yamoshi tried to execute the plan, but as soon as Frigg realized that Yamoshi was ready with his technique, Frigg thought, "I think I've seen this before. It's very clever, but it has its weakness." Frigg, as a great actor, pretended that he didn't understand what was happening, so that he could fight back at the right moment. So Yamoshi launched his key technique on top of Wukong, who teleported himself, but as soon as Wukong disappeared, Frigg appeared behind Yamoshi with a kick, almost hitting him. Frigg just didn't kick Yamoshi because before Frigg could, he ended up taking a powerful elbow from Wukong, who knew that Frigg would appear there. Wukong said, "You may be smart, but you're still much dumber than me. I knew you'd understand that technique and take that opportunity to catch Yamoshi off guard. However, you didn't count on my cunning, and now you're going to be beaten just because of that," Wukong said, teasing Frigg. After taking an elbow, Frigg was still hit by a kick from Yamoshi that threw the king of the icy race towards Wukong, who received it with a hook, making Frigg fly upwards. After throwing Frigg up there, Wukong sent the king of the icy race towards Yamoshi, who also received Frigg with a punch, and sent him up again with a kick. Frigg exploded with rage and began to raise his ki even more, making the 2 warriors startle with much power in a single creature. Frigg went over Yamoshi since he was a little injured and threw him towards Wukong, who held his ally with both hands. Then Frigg threw to Wukong, who couldn't defend himself and ended up taking the full damage. Frigg started a sequence of combined blows on the 2 opponents. Frigg kicked Yamoshi and Wukong at the same time, making them fly in the same direction. Then Frigg fired several blasts of ki and then advanced on top of the 2 Saiyans, surpassing Ki's own shots and hitting Yamoshi and Wukong with a knee. As soon as the Saiyans had a chance to fight back, they ended up taking the ki blasts, and with that they lost the opportunity, which meant that they had opened a gap for Frigg to hit the 2 Saiyans again. In the cave, the old man said, "This fight began to lean a lot towards the king of the icy race after all. Frigg was managing to win alone against the 2 Saiyans. Wukong will have to do something because Yamoshi is already tired. Apart from the fact that even if Yamoshi and Wukong manage to match Frigg, the king of the icy race is still far from falling. His resistance is quite impressive, so Wukong and Yamoshi will have to overcome a lot there. They will have to pass this level of fighting power if they want to stand a chance against the king of the entire icy race," said the old man, making Kennen reflect on what he could do. Back to the village. Wukong retreated because he felt that he was not yet at his peak and that he would be able to go beyond that, far beyond that. Wukong sought to concentrate even more. Wukong looked for the extreme focus, and once it hit, he got a high-level surprise. His hair turned white and his whole body glowed with a sparkling aura and an even more serious countenance. This is the complete form of the higher instinct. After this form was reached, the Saiyans together managed to match Frigg's power, but that wasn't enough yet. Since, as Kennen said, Yamoshi and Wukong would need to overcome Frigg's power a lot if they wanted to win, because the king of the icy race had enormous resistance. But Wukong and Yamoshi could find a way to make Frigg's power decrease. Both Saiyans focused on trying to make Frigg break the bones, and with that they ended up aiming the punches and kicks at the most sensitive points of the king of the ice race. But Frigg understood the plan of the Saiyans before they executed it, and so Frigg defended the areas of his body that he knew the Saiyans would attack. Wukong, with that power, was no longer hit by Frigg's blows because Frigg couldn't hit him, so apparently everyone was trapped in the same situation, in which neither side could do anything. That is, both could only do their best not to lose control. Fight. But beyond that battle was the angel Kennen in the cave. Kennen was worried about what could happen during the match, so he kept thinking of a way to make the 2 Saiyans overcome his opponent's offensive until finally Kennen found an answer. He remembered that he had the Potara earrings and took them out of his pocket. Kennen said, "I shouldn't give this to you, but it's the only thing I can do in this time of torment and worry," said Kennen, holding the Potara earrings in his hand. The elder looked at that curious object. After a long look, the old man approached Kennen as if he didn't want anything, The elder spoke. "What is this, and how can it help you win?" "I think lucky items won't work in this fight," said the elder, questioning Kennen. Kennen tried to explain this to the elder clearly so he could understand. Kennen said, "These are Potara earrings. They are able to make the two users become one, which cause the fighting power to increase drastically, and that would be very useful now. But the fusion has a time limit that cannot be disregarded. So I'll wait a little longer," said Kennen, waiting for the right moment to wear the earrings. The right moment would be when Frigg was already more weakened and tired, and so maybe Yamoshi and Wukong could win against the king of the icy race. On the planet of the Saiyans, Frigg fired a powerful sequence of attacks against the two Saiyans, who soon after exchanged blows with Frigg. But upon seeing the king of the ice race fighting two Saiyans at the same time, it was clear to Yamoshi and Wukong that they were having a hard time facing an opponent as strong as the king of the icy race. So Kennen, seeing the Saiyans suffering from the combat, appeared holding two Potara earrings and convinced the Saiyans to fuse using those objects. Kennen said, "Yamoshi and Wukong, wear those earrings. Yamoshi, put this earring on your left ear, and Wukong, put it on your right. This is the last hope. The last help I can offer you both. Fight with everything you've got," Kennen said, clearly desperate. Yamoshi and Wukong took the earrings that Kennen had thrown and put them on, started the fusion process, and from the fusion of Yamoshi and Wukong, an even stronger Saiyan with white hair and a strong body was born. The fusion was 1.90 meters tall, had a serious face and a bright aura because of the superior instinct that the fusion was using. As the fusion was the combination of Yamoshi and Wukong, the fusion was named Yamoshi, an extremely strong being. Yamoshi didn't say anything after the fusion. He just advanced towards Frigg with all his speed, and when he saw Yamoshi coming towards him, Frigg was so scared that his only reaction was to dodge Yamoshi. But even dodging, Frigg lost a finger, his foot, due to the disintegrating power of the Yamoshi fusion. Yamoshi was filled with conviction and said, "I've always wondered why people don't use their strongest attacks at first. Wouldn't that be the most obvious thing to do? Look how well it worked. You were almost completely decimated. Well, let's get down to business here," Yamoshi said, playing with the king of the icy race. The fusion of Yamoshi and Wukong went towards the opponent, but Yamoshi went slowly this time. Frigg, in an attempt to stop him, went up and frantically punched him in a short period of time. Yamoshi inherited the resistance of the two Saiyans, Yamoshi and Wukong, so the fusion felt almost nothing, and didn't even lose its posture. Frigg was still frustrated, and with that he raised his ki to have a chance of causing the least amount of damage to Yamoshi, but Frigg was unable to do so. Yamoshi laughed at the situation and said, "You are very weak. I'll have to take it easy on you," Yamoshi said, mocking his opponent. Frigg tried to retreat, but Yamoshi teleported behind Frigg and slapped the king of the ice race, showing all his disgust. Frigg failed to pretend that slap didn't hurt. Yamoshi grabbed his opponent and threw him away. Then the fusion flew in a curved trajectory and hit Frigg, throwing him to the left. Shortly after that, Yamoshi teleported himself under the opponent and gave a hook, causing Frigg to fly upwards. Yamoshi fired several blasts of ki that hit the ice race king squarely. Frigg started to fall towards the ground, but he recovered, and in mid-air, Frigg used his last energies to raise his ki, and thus get even more power. Frigg was now stronger, but when he realized it, Yamoshi's knee was going towards him. Unlike before, Frigg didn't go flying with the blow, but being hit by the knee was very painful and complicated. Frigg then retaliated in a dignified way by kicking his opponent's face, and taking him out of his posture, leaving the fusion with his guard open. However, when Frigg tried to strike Yamoshi again, he failed, as Yamoshi had already recovered. Frigg opted to kick him again, but Yamoshi dodged and tried to hit Frigg, who also dodged. Frigg came up with a plan after noticing something interesting in the last exchange of blows. Frigg waited for his opponent to act, and with that he almost received a punch in the face. Luckily, Frigg managed to dodge and saw that his plan was right. Yamoshi left his belly area very exposed when he landed a left jab. Frigg tried to hit Yamoshi in the belly, but as soon as he hit his hand on Yamoshi, his hand started to hurt. Yamoshi realized that Frigg was trying to take advantage of his fake weakness. Yamoshi said, "My belly is not my weak point, it is my strong point. I do not leave any weak point exposed, unlike you," Yamoshi said. After saying that, Frigg received a kick on the side of the chest, which was his weak point. Yamoshi continued his attacks relentlessly. He was unstoppable. Nothing inside him was as strong as the urge to make Frigg pay for what he did to the Saiyans. Yamoshi performed an almost endless sequence of punches with all his fury. These attacks took the fight to all sides of the arena. Frigg was using all his focus and concentration to resist the attacks, and at the same time trying to find a weak point in his opponent, which it was an almost impossible task, considering the superior power of Yamoshi, who still hadn't ceased his powerful punches. Yamoshi then asked Frigg, "Come on, is this all the power of the incredible king of the ice race?" Yamoshi asked angrily. Anger that was fueled by the fact that all those Saiyans who were being held captive and whose suffering echoed were in this situation because of Frigg, who was now weak both in spirit and in fighting power. Yamoshi finally ended his sequence of attacks with a powerful punch that caused Frigg's body to be thrown against a wall. The wall broke, but the force with which Frigg had been released made him keep moving even after hitting the wall, going outside the castle where Yamoshi was already waiting for him. The sky of the planet was dark and cloudy. You could say that it was even a little greenish there, and it was a cold breeze in the air, and in general that was a beautiful night in a way. The beauty of the night together with its wind spoke with the latest events of the planet, because it was on that night that the Saiyan race would finally be liberated. And it was also on that night that the world saw, for the first time, a transformation that emanated such a beautiful and threatening power at the same time. Frigg was worn out because of the fight, and also because of the power of his opponent. But somehow Frigg found within himself the strength and determination to continue that battle. Frigg knew that it was extremely unlikely that he could turn the tables, but even so Frigg had to continue. As the king of the icy race, it was his duty to fight as far as his strength would allow. And it was then that Frigg found another motivation besides his enormous pride, and this motivation was much stronger. At that moment Frigg began to fight for the commitment he had with his race. He would not fight just because he was the king of the icy race. Now Frigg would fight for the survival of the icy race. Frigg said, "I'll continue, for the pride of the icy race," Frigg said to himself. Then Frigg started screaming, and an aura surged over his body. Again he concentrated his ki, which started to cover his arms and fists with energy. Frigg and Yamoshi advanced towards each other and started to hit each other at high speed. Yamoshi noticed that Frigg was fighting with more intensity than before, and that now his punches did some damage to Yamoshi, who knew that he was still the strongest among the two in that fight. But Yamoshi also felt the fusion could not last much longer. Frigg tried to attack Yamoshi with a powerful sequence of kicks that was defended by the fusion that soon after tried to hit Frigg on the left, but Frigg managed to dodge the punch, and then he grabbed Yamoshi's head with his right hand, and then flew quickly towards the ground, dragging Yamoshi's head along the ground. While being dragged, Yamoshi put the palm of his hand on Frigg's chest and fired a blast of ki that caused the king of the icy race to be thrown away. Then Yamoshi started to put his idea into practice. He armed his position by standing aside, moving away his legs, and putting his hands together near his waist. Yamoshi shouted, "Gallico!" screamed Yamoshi. Yamoshi launched the Gallico attack on Frigg. Yamoshi kept the Gallico for about 10 seconds, until then the fusion time came to an end. But when that happened, Wukong and Yamoshi, who were now separated, were in the same pose as Yamoshi was, and not only that, the two Saiyans were continuing the Gallic-Ho that Yamoshi had started. But as Yamoshi and Wukong had spent a lot of energy due to the fusion and the fight in general, they didn't last long and stopped the attack. A large cloud of dust had formed where Frigg was, and when it went down, it was possible to see Frigg still alive, but he was without strength and very weak. Wukong and Yamoshi knew that this was the perfect chance to end it once and for all, because if they managed to launch an attack strong enough to kill Frigg, the mission would be practically accomplished. Wukong looked at Yamoshi and said, "Now, let's use our last technique," said Wukong. After the fusion ended, Yamoshi and Wukong looked at each other confidently. Both began to use their last strength to perform a secret technique that would be able to kill Frigg, even though the king of the icy race had an absurd and colossal resistance. Yamoshi and Wukong gathered ki, and that ki glowed brightly before starting to flash in a yellowish light. Wukong and Yamoshi smiled proudly. Both were determined to win with everything they had, and then they went after Frigg. The light that came out of the ki was so intense that it slightly blinded the king of the icy race as time went by. Wukong and Yamoshi were throwing Frigg from one side to the other with varied blows, leaving the villain completely disoriented. Kennen looked at the situation very worried and tense, and then said, "It's not possible that Wukong and Yamoshi will do what I'm thinking. Is it really serious? They don't need to do this since their opponent is on the ground," Kennen said desperately and nervously hitting his staff with all his strength on the ground. Eldest said, "As much as Frigg was completely hurt and exhausted, Wukong and Yamoshi were in a worse situation. Frigg is a monster in combat and the two Saiyans were almost killed. The elder commented on the fight while Kennen was irritated for being unable to do something. Angel apprentice Kennen commented, "I wish I could do something, but my role as an angel prevents me from meddling." Kennen growled desperately, enraged, while the earth shook with the shock of Wukong, Yamoshi, and Frigg's power. The desperate way in which Wukong and Yamoshi fought against Frigg seemed like the Saiyan's last option, but when analyzing the situation, the old man realized that there was something there. The elder, who had just understood what was happening, put his hand on the angel, Kennen's shoulder, and said, "They're being smart. They want to save everyone and die knowing they've made it. There would still be a chance for Frigg if they tried another option. But if they're doing it, it's because they know it's the only answer. Well, that's the only reason I can see why they're doing something like that. Wukong and Yamoshi are really great warriors, and we are great masters," said the elder, proud of the results of the training that Wukong and Yamoshi had. After hearing the words of the elder, Kennen became calmer and decided to continue watching. Kennen looked at the elder, surprised with what was happening in front of him. Wukong and Yamoshi were almost there. The brightness of their aura is starting to hurt everyone's eyes. It really is quite strong. A glow like that would be able to blind some races or even blind a normal Saiyan. If that's the only option they have, then I'll trust them, because it's good to see how they practically saved an entire race, along with their planet. Frigg was already hopeless, even though there was something in him that still wanted to resist and fight, even though Frigg knew that there would be the end of him and his entire plan. The elder noticed something again and looked at Kennen with a startled look. Kennen was confused for a moment, but then the old man started to explain things. "We have to get out of here too. We don't want to be affected. Run!" While the elder was slightly desperate, the angel Kennen just hit his staff on the ground and teleported with the elder to a place a little more distant and safe, but where they could still see the fight. While that was happening, the Saiyans looked at each other and started what would possibly be their last conversation. Yamoshi said, "I wanted to spend more time here, but I'm happy to save the planet," Yamoshi said in a melancholy tone while engaging intense punches with Frigg. With a kick, Wukong threw the king of the icy race away, and then Wukong took the opportunity to recover his breath. Wukong looked at Yamoshi and spoke in an ironic tone. "You've been through this recently, right? You must not be as worried as I am," Wukong said. Both Saiyans laughed and said at the same time, "I'm going to miss you," said both Saiyans. Wukong and Yamoshi began to release the energy they were carrying, and with that they shot everything in the form of waves towards Frigg. After releasing all the energy, Wukong and Yamoshi exploded, and Frigg still tried to resist holding the explosion, but that was in vain, and finally Frigg was completely consumed by the explosion and was killed in the process. Kennen, together with the elder, watched that explosion with a sad look for what had happened to the Saiyans. The explosion of Wukong and Yamoshi was consuming a large area around them. After the two Saiyans died, an aura came out of the Saiyans' bodies. It was their vital energies that began to surround the planet, and for the inhabitants the energies had the shape and appearance of an aurora borealis. The old man and Kennen knew that it wasn't a natural phenomenon or anything like that. But all the rest of the living beings that were on that part of the planet's biosphere thought that it was just another work of nature and continued their lives normally. Despite the efforts of Wukong and his faithful squire Yamoshi, the planet was still ruled by members of the icy race, even with the defeat of Frigg. But with the death of Frigg, the situation was better than before. Prisoners were managing to fight back and the rebellion was growing stronger. It was only a matter of time before everything was resolved, and the planet was peaceful again, as it was meant to be. Kennen, the angel's apprentice, even commented on that majestic event. It was really a beautiful fight. You could see how Wukong and Yamoshi were formidable warriors. Even their auras had a very different shape when compared to the aurora borealis. And that's not enough for mortals to realize that these auras were from Wukong and Yamoshi. Now that Frigg was gone, the Saiyan rebellion was bigger. They were invading bases and making plans to dethrone the icy race. Even so, that still wasn't enough to decimate the icy race. That was too big, said Kennen, lamenting the death of the two Saiyans and admiring the event that was in front of him. The elder, who was paying attention and reflecting on Kennen's words, had a prediction, and soon commented with the angel. "I just had a vision, a feeling, or something like that. 5 specific Saiyans will change the world. I believe that this vital energy will fall on these Saiyans and bless them with strength, determination, and charisma. We have to find these warriors so we can train them and make the Saiyans win the war that Yamoshi and Wukong fought so hard to help win," said the old man when thinking a little about what was happening. As soon as the old man finished speaking, the vital energies flying over the planet were moving in a specific way and shining more intensely at certain points. They swayed to a completely different rhythm. Normal citizens would never be able to notice, but the energy was going towards the ground discreetly. But for citizens, the energy was just fading. The energy discreetly descended in 5 different corners of the world. As soon as he saw his prophecy coming true, the elders celebrated. See? The energy was going down quietly, even though it seemed to be fading. We're finally going to see the Saiyans win. You are already writing it down because if we pay close attention, the energies are descending at 5 different points. If we look hard enough, we'll find each of the 5 Saiyans chosen to change the world. Kennen looked carefully at the energy slowly descending, and said to the old man while pointing to the energies, Yamoshi and Wukong are great warriors, so I trust that they will choose well who will be the next to take their place as heroes. All the chosen 5 are still too young for us to train them, so we can conclude that this war will still last a good few years. But even so, I'm happy to see that according to your prediction, the Saiyans will win. I trust with my eyes closed in your visions of the future, Kennen said, relieved with the news. The proud old man said, The chosen ones will be great warriors, I'm sure of that, as it was with Yamoshi and Wukong. I'm honored to have my views admired by someone like you. This is not something you see every day. The elder and the angel Kennen watched from afar as they thought what would be the fate of the Saiyan race at the moment. But one thing was certain, the future was going to be better than the present after the sacrifice of Wukong and Yamoshi, together with the victory of the Saiyans against King Frigg. The other Saiyans on the planet could only see one thing: hope. The end. Hey guys, I know it's sad when today's video unfortunately ends, but don't worry because this is not the end. New episodes are coming. And if you like it, don't forget to leave your like because it helps us a lot and motivates us to continue with these videos that you like so much. Comment your theories of what might happen in the next episode and share the video with your friends so you can watch it together. That's it, see you guys!